There is power in art, in creativity. We look to it for inspiration, for hope, for unity. The world needs artists right now. The world will always need artists. Together, we are resilient. Together, we can use our art to speak truth, to face our fears, and create a world worth sharing.
Hi, welcome to the Fall 2020 information session. We are so excited to be able to talk about some of the plans that we put together and the work that we've been doing over the summer to get ready for our return to campus in the fall. I'm Claire Mockamer, Vice Chancellor of Strategic Communications, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of how the session will go today. So your cameras and your mics are disabled, but you can chat in your questions in the Q&A section on the right side of the screen. We're going to send those questions to our panel, and they're going to answer as many questions as they can get to during our session today. We also have a couple employees chatting answers into the chat itself. So if you post a question, look back there to see if you get an answer even faster than going before the panel. The questions that we can't get to today, we will post on our FAQ page in the Fall 2020 section on our website. And you can find that at uncsa.edu/plan. So be sure to visit that page to see all the updates that we put out regards to the fall semester and all of the planning that we have in regards to bringing everyone back to campus safely. Now I'd like to introduce our interim provost, Karin Peterson, who is going to share a message with you.
Well, good morning. Welcome. We are so pleased to greet you, our brand new students, and I greet you as the Chief Academic Officer of the institution on behalf of the art school deans and the division deans. And we just want to say how thrilled we are to have you here. I want you to know how very hard each school has been working this year to prepare for an exciting year. A very exciting year. It will be a year that looks somewhat different, but it will also be a year that aligns with where the industries are, and that will give you lots of ways in which you can engage with your art form and continue to develop as an artist. So I just want to welcome you and congratulate you on the start of your new school year. And I'd like to introduce to you our brand new Chancellor, Brian Cole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peterson. Hello and good afternoon to our newest group of Fighting Pickles. That's exciting to say. And I'm referring not just to the students, but you parents as well. Whether you know it or not, or whether you like it, you too are now Fighting Pickles. But before I begin, I feel it's important to repeat something that I've said in meetings over the past month. And that is that while we are gathering today regarding the COVID-19 crisis and our plans to deal with it, we are all living through two big crises at the same time right now. One that has been 3 or 4 months in the making, and the other that has been arguably 3 or 4 centuries in the making. And I'm talking about the deep systemic problems of racism, of racial inequality and justice in our society. And there's a lot to discuss and so much more that needs action. And I want everybody to know that I am committed to listening to the Black members of our community and to all people of color in our community, and more importantly, doing the hard work needed to make substantial and sustained change. We're working right now with our student leaders directly, with our new incoming provost, Patrick Sims, and other campus leaders like Dr. Ford and Dr. Peterson to together as a group come up with a framework and an action plan for that work. And we plan to share that with the community soon. So I want to be clear, crystal clear, that Black lives matter, period. They matter to me, they matter to this institution, and they must matter to anyone that wants to be a part of it. So as we start today, I want to mark that because it's critical and it's just as important as anything else we're going to talk about today. I'm very personally invested in our school because it is incredible and it's unique. And you know that because you've been looking at the school for quite some time to make the decision to become part of this family. There's really nothing like it anywhere else, not in North Carolina, not like anywhere in the entire country. a high-level, fully immersive arts conservatory with elite training in every facet of the industry, but in the public sector. That's something really transformative and special and something to protect. And I say that because I'm also invested in another way that you might not be aware of, that I too am a parent at UNCSA. I have another insight into this program outside of just being chancellor, and it just goes without saying that as we plan for the coming year, I continually look at things through that lens as well, through the parent lens. So I trust that you've all read the communication that was sent back on June 12th regarding fall planning. And today is really a chance to follow up on that and connect with you all. I'm going to present a few opening topics, over the next 9 or 10 minutes, but we'll spend the larger balance of the time answering your questions. And that's, I think, the most important thing to do today. Some that you've already submitted to us that we have, and then most of which that are being submitted already in the session that we're collecting, as Claire said. I want you to know that this is far from your only opportunity to connect with us, though, and to not feel pressured by feeling that way. And we continue to receive your questions and update our FAQ in the fall planning resources on the web. And just understand that as we enter this second part of the summer, our goal is to create a scenario where you all feel connected to us and that you all feel that you know what is going on. And I want you to know that if you don't feel that way at some point, that we want to hear from you so that we can help that. That's very important to me and the entire team. We're going to be focusing the time we have today on questions and policies that pertain to all of you as new students in our college and graduate programs. I know that many of you also have questions that are much more specific to your individual areas of art study, and I assure you that you'll be connecting with your art schools as well. If you haven't already, and I think a lot of you have, you'll be receiving further information directly from your specific art schools and those deans about their follow-up sessions that are being hosted, which will give you the opportunity to dive deeper into the coursework with them, the training plans, and some of those specific things that you're wanting to know as you plan for the fall, and the channels that they have also to stay connected in those areas. So it's our mission, and I feel a solemn responsibility for us to develop and train the next generation of artists and citizens, and to do everything we can to help students learn and develop in the best environment possible, to help you make progress in your degrees and ultimately your careers. And in this, our primary focus is and always will be the health and safety of the UNCSA community. You, our students, all of our faculty and our staff, and that is the main and most important lens we use for all the decision making. Our faculty were able to do some truly remarkable things this past spring as they taught our students remotely. And if the health situation in our state and our country ended up requiring it, we would plan and prepare to do that again. But we know that the most effective way for student artists to learn is to bring them here to campus with our faculty and with our staff. And we are confident that we can do that in a way that mitigates the risk of COVID-19 and safeguards our community in the process. So we've been working tirelessly with the faculty and staff to create and plan a hybrid arts educational environment that leverages and balances the core elements of those in-person experiences on campus along with online resources. Doing that will put us in a position to give you the core experiences that you come here for, but also allows us to spread people out in the process, to reduce the density in our academic and residential and other social spaces on campus. Over the course of the past several weeks, we've been working closely with an infectious disease spread expert from UNC Health, who has made multiple visits to our campus to tour and review every one of our spaces and give us detailed guidance on what measures we need to have in place for the different spaces and also the different kinds of activities that happen in those spaces as they apply specifically to UNCSA and arts training. So that's very important. I know one of the many questions that you have is, what does that mean for performances and productions? The experience of performing is obviously central to much of what we do at UNCSA. And sharing the end product of the work that you do here with an audience is an exciting part of this experience. But the reason that students come here is because of the unparalleled access to learning the process of creating art. The process of learning, rehearsing, producing art is what we're talking about when I say we are focusing on the core experiences of art training. We are planning a framework and environment to safely and responsibly be able to put groups of students, faculty, and staff together to be able to focus on that process and put together these kinds of projects and these kinds of works. There may not be a live audience, or certainly there may be a dramatically smaller one. But I want you to know we're also working on an expanded capacity to stream much of the student work, either live or as produced video projects. With the situation we're in, it is likely that in many cases, the size and the scale of these kinds of productions will have to be adapted. For one important example that I know a lot of you have asked about, the schools of dance, design and production, filmmaking, and music are currently reimagining how our students can collaborate on an alternative kind of Nutcracker performance and production, one that follows health and safety protocols and provides the kind of educational artistic opportunities in video production that not only respond to the situation we are in, but to the entirely new landscape for the arts and entertainment business that we're also in a national and a global scale. You'll see over the coming months that UNCSA has actually been a leader in this nationally in terms of the national conservatory landscape. And we have been out in front of a majority of our conservatory colleagues in planning for the fall and communicating those plans. And we intend to stay that way. Our schools have been working furiously to coordinate our instructional planning with a reimagined performance and production planning calendar. And we're making great progress on this, and we'll be sharing that information in the calendar with everyone throughout the summer as it becomes finalized. What we are planning is a big undertaking, and it is drawing on our institutional resources more than any time ever in our history. And that's also the case with all of our other UNC sibling campuses in the system. I know that many of you have expressed concerns about cost, and that is something in which we are always cognizant. We are squarely focused on creating an excellent and effective experience for students this year, and I'm so confident in our ability to do so. And the reality is that the resources for doing that and implementing the measures to make sure we do it safely and responsibly, it will be more challenging and costly than before, not less. We are doing everything possible to make sure that those new challenges are not passed on to students and parents. The cost of tuition remains the same. And it's important to mark that those costs and rates are regulated and governed by the UNC system leadership and not at the campus level for UNCSA as well as the other campuses. We are doing everything possible to protect the experience for you all, not just for next year, but for other years that you may be with us and other students that will come after you. And I know we can do it. And the last thing I want to mention before we dive into further questions, and I think this is really the most important one, is that for next year, what we're doing is not going to just require sound policy and planning. It is going to require the will and the commitment, the spirit of our entire community. We mentioned in that last communication that there will be community health standards and rules in place on campus for every person there. And I just want to review those again, because we're not just talking about, as we do often, about we want to create an environment that everybody wants to come back to. I also look at it from the other side in that our goal is to protect every person on this community, every single person, especially those who may have an elevated risk. And I view these community health standards also as rules of engagement. If somebody wants to be here and wants to be a part of what we're doing, then we expect people to follow these rules as well. And the categories of that, I mentioned that all students and faculty and staff will be required to wear a mask and other approved face covering on campus. And that is a requirement system-wide now throughout the UNC system. We will be providing masks for all students, faculty, and staff. And when there is, or if there is a specific circumstance where a mask is not possible to be worn, and I'm talking about within the context of an arts training exercise. For example, if you're a trumpet player or a singer or certain settings within drama, for example, then there are other specific measures in PPE that will be implemented as per the guidance of our experts. So the requirement is that people are always wearing masks when they're around people. And this will be enforced. Practice of physical and social distancing, this is something that we see in the news and society all the time. And I'm talking about how that applies to specific spaces and rules that we set up of how we use those spaces, but also in everyday life and all the spaces in between. We expect everybody to practice those social distancing in every part of their life on campus or around people in our community. Frequent hand washing and the use of hand sanitizers. This is something that we've heard from day one in our country. That is absolutely a requirement on this campus too. And we're also putting resources in place to allow people to practice that responsibly and with a much higher degree of frequency than they would have under normal times. And lastly, we're developing an online training module that will be required of all persons prior to arrival on campus, not just students, but every single person that's coming back for operations here. This is very important to ensure that every person in our community knows the facts about COVID-19 and how it is spread, knows the policies that will be in place and understands very clearly. And that as a community, we are operating from the same data and the same perspective. I think that's also critical in our ability to move forward in the way that we're planning. So let me stop talking at you as I promised, and let's dive into more of the questions that you have. I'm going to turn things back over to our distinguished panel, who are going to introduce themselves briefly in just a moment, and then to Jim DeCristo, who will moderate the session and the questions you have through the members of the panel today. So again, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Hello, I am Tracy Ford, and I am the Vice Provost and Dean of Student Affairs, and my responsibilities include the residence halls, student life, student engagement, the health center, and I look forward to getting to know all of you as you enter into UNCSA.
Welcome, I am Jim DeCristo, and I am Chief of Staff for the university.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Martin. I'm your Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities.
And good morning or good afternoon. And this is Dr. Lauren Spielman, and I am the Medical Director of Health Services and the Student Health Services Center.
Hello, I'm Paul Raza, your Director of Admissions. So glad to be here with you.
Hi, I'm Jane Carfrazo-Kamyap. I'm the Director of Student Financial Aid.
Okay, let's get started with the questions. The first question will be for Tracy. It's actually a four-part question, all related to freshman move-in. The first question is, what day will incoming freshmen move in? The second question is, how many people are allowed to accompany students during move-in? The third question is, what is the process for move-in? And then the final question, or the fourth question is there a list of required or recommended supplies the students should come with, and are there specifications for those items?
Okay, thank you, Jim. So for residence life, we will have the move-in schedule will be sent out by July 6th. The week of move-in is August 10th through the 16th. At this time, I can't provide you with the specific date that you will move in, but just know that week, August 10th through the 16th. By July 6th, you will receive your assignment information as well as the links to sign up for appointments. These appointments will be 2-hour blocks. You will be allowed 2 persons to help you move in. You will be required, you and your guests will be required to follow all safety protocols that will be in place, including masks and any type of sanitizing that we will request that you do while you're there in terms of when using the bathrooms or the elevators or any of those things that you may have to use as you move in. We will also have some screenings in place for students prior to going over to the residence halls. So our health services will send out information around what the health screenings will look like. You will also have to make sure that you have all of your immunizations and all of your health records in place prior to moving in. Again, you will get more information. We will have an online orientation July 20th through the 27th, where you'll get very specific information, although you will hear more about this prior to the 20th. But in terms of just move-in, we have a staggered move-in process so that we can adhere to social distancing and keep everyone safe. We will send a list of modified items that we would like students to bring, and you will also receive that information by July 6th as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Next question is for Brian, and that question is there a possibility that the fall semester will end up online due to the pandemic?
Thank you. Very important question. So what we're doing, we're talking about what our plans are in terms of a hybrid and in-person environment in the fall. But I want you to know that we're planning for every possible scenario. As I mentioned early on, our faculty and staff were able to do some extraordinary things last spring. And if the situation on the ground, and it's one that we continually monitor, not just certainly in terms of our county, but our state and nationally in collaboration with the system and the government, we're continually monitoring that situation. And if the situation made it to where we had to move to an online instruction, then we would. So we continue to consider that in every aspect of what we were planning, so that if that were required, we'd be able to pivot to it even easier and an even bigger way than was in the past. So that's really what I could say about that. There's no specific tipping point or something that's being considered right now. A lot of those discussions and those decisions would react very much to state and local agencies. So, if there was for example, any COVID-19 case that might be confirmed on any campus in Winston-Salem or any other part of our city would have to be reported to the county health department. And so all is to say that we continually stay in touch with all those agencies and the situation on the ground, understanding that what we know right now could be different in 2 months from now. But we continue to plan for every possible scenario.
Thank you, Brian. The next two questions are for Tracy. The first question, Tracy, is can you explain how parents will participate in orientations? And then the second question is, how will the fitness center operate given the pandemic?
Okay, so parents will participate in online orientation. All of the UNC system institutions have implemented an online process for orientation for parents, and so that will be the primary way they receive information. However, in addition to online orientation, the Division of Student Affairs will have a call-in number as well as some additional Zoom meetings so that parents who want to interface with us and continue to ask questions will have access to our staff, and they will be able to continue to ask questions even after the online orientation. As for the fitness center will be open. We had our infectious disease consultant spent a fair amount of time in our fitness center walking through and providing us with some safety protocols that we will put in place, and those include social distancing and enhanced cleaning and disinfecting. We will also work to have more outdoor physical activities so that students will have opportunities to stay fit through outdoor activities as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy. The next question is for both Dr. Spillman and Tracy. The question is, can we explain our procedure around quarantine and how the dorms will be engaged in that process?
I'll start. Students that are ill will be instructed to contact the Wellness Center and make an appointment, and then they will be seen individually. There will be limited number of people in the health services area at any given time. If the symptoms warrant, then we will begin testing. We will have the availability to collect the test on site, and then the student will then be put in quarantine until the test results come back, and the test results will take about 24 hours. If the test result is positive, and then we will contact the county health department officials and begin a tracing protocol, which identifying contacts. And then if the student is a resident on campus, they will then be moved to isolation, or they can go home if the families can come get them and take them home. And Tracy can explain what that's going to look like.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Spillman. So as part of our process for Residence Life this year, we took some rooms offline so that we could have isolation and quarantine space for our students. Those rooms will include private bathrooms, and most will have kitchens, some do not. Students will have a check-in process. If they are quarantined, they will have a check-in process with our health center daily, a couple times a day in terms of a check-in. In addition, our Residence Life staff will deliver meals to students if they find themselves in the isolation or in those isolation rooms. And so we are prepared. We've had to do this before in previous years. And so students will be well taken care of if they are placed in isolation.
Thank you. The next two questions are for Jane. The first question is, when will loan disbursements come out? And then the second question is, how will work study work this year given the pandemic?
Okay, let's start with what we call credit balance refunds. That's when the amount of financial aid a student receives exceeds their school bill, and then it creates what we call a refund. In terms of student loans, students want to be sure that all their requirements are taken place before August 7th. That would include accepting the student loans, completing their entrance counseling on the studentloans.gov site, and completing their loan agreement or promissory note on the same government site. If all of that is in place and we disperse to the student's account by 10 days before classes begin, so that would be August 7th, the Bursar's office will create the credit balance refunds for the students by the 7th day of class, approximately August 25th. So that's what we're looking at. Another thing to keep in mind is to be sure that the students have direct deposits set up through the Bursar's office. In that way, the credit balance refunds can be put directly in the student's bank account. Otherwise, there'll be a paper check mailed to the permanent home address. So there's a big advantage to being sure that the student does sign up for direct deposit in a timely manner. In terms of federal work study, we are pursuing all approaches that we've done in the past and trying to transition them in all ways possible to certain safety protocols. So for example, students would have to submit certain forms, and sometimes those are done in person. We're going to be working with our Human Resources Office to see what forms can be done online, so that there doesn't have to be those extra touch points. Also, our sign-up times for federal work study have in the past occurred with students occurring in our office in large groves on certain days. We'll probably be looking at some type of appointment setting process for that. And that's just to get the work study started. In terms of the positions, we'll be working with the supervisors to see what types of jobs can be done using the safety protocols that will be on campus for the semester. So students that have been offered federal work study and have accepted it through our Easy Arts online portal should be receiving information in the next 2 to 3 weeks from our office about the requirements, the timelines, the meetings, and that type of thing. So I'll be looking for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next question is for Brian. Brian, the question is, if the school is interrupted due to the pandemic, will housing fees be refunded?
Thank you for that question. That is exactly what happened last spring. As operations were instructed and we moved to online instruction, there were prorated refunds to housing. So that was a decision that was and would be coordinated by the system office. So it's something that certainly is under discussion for ongoing policy. I have no reason to think that it wouldn't be the case, but it's something that it would be coordinated, a decision that would be coordinated by the president of the UNC system with other chancellors, and would be a system-wide policy, not a campus by campus policy.
Thank you. Next question is for Brian and Tracy. If a student doesn't comply with wearing a mask, what will the consequences be?
Like, as I was saying in my opening, in terms of what I think is one of the critical facets of not just us being on campus together, but all of us being in our communities and society together, is the personal responsibility to protect ourselves and protect each other. So when we talk about complying with wearing a mask, it is a requirement, just like any other kind of rules of conduct that we already have for students or for anybody. So that it's not just an expectation, it is a requirement, and it will be enforced, and there will be consequences. I will say that I also fully anticipate we're talking about this with terms of enforcement and regulations. I also want to say, Tracy can speak a little bit more about that, but I fully expect and anticipate that all of our students are going to view this very positively and want to protect each other and really police each other, because this is a very intimate and special kind of community of artists. And I fully anticipate our students to really rally around that and do this together. And I've heard a lot of student leaders here and other campuses throughout the UNC system talking about that, how that we need to do this as a community. That being said, though, it will be enforced. So I'll let Tracy speak a little bit about that, as we refine those policies. And I know that she's been in touch with her colleagues throughout the system on how other institutions are going to approach that as well.
Yes, Chancellor Cole, to answer that question, we will have disciplined sanctions in place for students who do not comply with our safety rules around COVID-19. And our first response always to students who are non-compliant is to first educate and try to develop our students so that they can understand why we need them to be compliant and help them change their behavior. But we are prepared to progressively increase those sanctions if students repeatedly violate our safety protocols. So our sanctions will range from everything from education and development to possible expulsion if the behavior is repeated and egregious. So this is our way of protecting our campus and keeping all of us safe. We are a community, we are a family, and so we really expect that everyone will comply. And in those instances where students don't, we do believe as far as we'll have to go is education and to give students reminders, but we are prepared to go further if we have to.
I think you're muted, Jim.
Thank you, Tracy. The next question comes back to you. It's a multiple part question. The first is, when will people who applied for the dorms be notified whether they've gotten in or not? And then the second part has to do with the lofting of beds and where and when that would be allowed.
Okay, so our assignments go out on July 6th. We have, for the most part, we have a good idea of how many students on the waiting list will most likely not get housing because of the capacity that we're at, and we'll notify those students before July 6th so that they can begin planning for other options. But for the most part, we've been able to house just about everybody who requested housing, and the assignments for that will go out on July 6th. In terms of lofting, you can request to have your beds lofted in the A through F residence halls, and you will receive information on how to request lofting and what that time frame will look like. But yes, there is the ability to loft your beds in A through F.
Thank you, Tracy. A couple more questions for you. The first one, given the circumstances, what measures are being put in place to protect and maintain students' mental health?
Yeah, so we do a really good job here at UNCSA, even prior to the pandemic, of working with our students around mental health issues. It's a strong focus of our institution, and in particular, our student affairs area and our health center. And so we have highly qualified counselors, we have a psychiatrist, we also have counseling interns that assist us with working with our students regarding mental health. On top of that, this year, we have had we've received 2 grants from our UNC system. They were competitive grants, which means we had to apply and compete against other schools to receive the funding. And we received 2 of those grants so that we could implement even more programs and services for our students around mental health. One of the things that we're going to do this year with our schedule is, you will see on your schedule, there'll be several Wednesdays that we will have off during the academic year. These Wednesdays are for students to rest, for us to have opportunities for self-care, for students to be able to engage in mindfulness activities and just relaxation, so that we can ensure students have an opportunity to truly rest and relax because this will be a long semester. We won't have many breaks, so we'll be taking some time to do that on Wednesdays. You will get more information on how to engage with our health center, how to make appointments, how to see our staff, so that you will be able to get the assistance that you need. We also have HealthLink, and HealthLink is a service that we use after hours, so that if students need any kind of assistance, we'll be able to call HealthLink. And HealthLink allows us to provide 24/7 access to mental health as well as medical health.
Thank you, Tracy. Another one for you. Due to the pandemic, has the school considered single rooms only versus double rooms?
Yes, we did consider that. And in conversations with our system president, who actually is the former director of the CDC, and also looking at Health and Human Services guidelines, the system recommended that we move forward with having double occupancy in our rooms as long as we take the right precautions, which we are planning to do that. However, we did increase the number of single rooms that will be available so that we can accommodate students who may have some medical challenges and need to be in single rooms. We also took some of our smaller rooms, and instead of making those doubles, we did make those singles. So we accomplished two things. By turning some doubles into singles, we were able to reduce the density or the population in those residence halls, and that also increased the number of singles that we have available to students. So we have a really good plan in place for our rooms with doubles, and we have an increased number of singles for students who may need that as an option.
Tracy, I promise I'll give you a break in a second, but the next
Okay.
question is for you. Will there be any restrictions on students leaving the campus?
There won't necessarily be restrictions, but our students will be required to adhere to safety protocols, whether you are on campus or off campus. We would ask that you mask, that you follow hand washing and sanitizing protocols when you're off campus, and that you complete your daily screenings. We know many of you have to leave campus for various reasons, and so we definitely want to support that, and we will expect you as members of our community to show consideration and care for everyone, so that when you are off campus and when you're returning to campus, that you're just being as precautious as possible. We still want you to have a good experience. We want you to feel free to engage in Winston-Salem and engage in our community and be able to leave campus, but we just want you to do that safely, and we want you to do that in a way where you take into consideration the health and safety of others.
I want to just reinforce what Tracy is saying there in terms of, we're really talking that doubles down the importance of mask wearing. And it's important for everybody to remember that the biggest benefit of wearing a mask is protecting other people from ourselves. Especially when we talk about people who may be asymptomatic or people who are symptomatic, whatever it is that, it protects other people as well as ourselves. But I think that's an important thing to remember when we talk about whether somebody might come off campus, where they come into contact with somebody. We have the safeguards and the procedures and screenings in place that Dr. Ford mentioned, but that's just another reason to reinforce just the importance of wearing a mask and the incredible efficacy of doing so. So I just want to keep bringing that up.
Yeah, and the only thing I will say is that if you don't have to leave campus, then I suggest that you don't. We will have opportunities for you to order food and deliveries and Amazon and all those places where you order items from. That will still be a possibility. Just like now, there are times when maybe you have to go in the store, and there are other times when you can pre-order and have it sent to you, or you pick it up. So just kind of use discretion when you decide, do I really need to leave campus today? Is this something I can do another way?
Okay, the next question is really for Brian and probably Tracy a little bit too. And the question is, there is a concern that college students will not abide by social distancing rules when off campus and thereby bring COVID-19 to campus. Will UNCSA monitor this activity at all?
Well, that really kind of piggybacks onto what we were just saying in terms of the reason we have screenings and the procedures for people to notify when they do have to come off campus, and trying to limit as much as possible when people do. And like I said, and the importance of wearing a mask to protect the community, regardless of what exposure may or may not be the case. Tracy?
Yeah, and what I want to add to that is that if students are, say, for example, have to, whatever reason, go out of state or go home for the weekend or go out of the country for whatever reason. We know emergencies happen. In those situations, we would want to monitor that you've left campus and what your intentions are in terms of when you come back, because there might have to be a screening or test prior to you coming back. I'm not saying that every time you go home, you'll have to be tested, but it's just good for us to know where students are traveling to, because that helps us with tracing, that helps us with knowing if you've gone to a hot spot. So that's more of how we will monitor when you're off campus. If you're going into the Winston-Salem community, not so much, but when you find yourself leaving our area or leaving the state or leaving the country, we certainly want to know that.
Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Spilman, actually the next two. The first is, what is the protocol if there is a positive case at UNCSA after we return to campus? And then the second question is, will there be a mandatory quarantine or COVID testing before coming onto campus?
Hey, there is a written protocol for us to follow. It's been developed with guidance from the UNC system. And what we're going to be able to do is, and when we get a positive test result, is isolate the patient and then contact the county health officials for the Forsyth County. And they will give us direction as far as what to do with contacts. They will do the contact tracing and give us some information concerning ongoing processes. What we do with our student, they will then be contacted every day. They will be followed daily. They will take their own temperature twice a day. And they will be isolated away from others for 10 days. And that is what the health department recommends. And the last 3 days they will have to have no fever. And as long as they have no fever for 3 days, that's without any medications to suppress the fever. So they'll have to go 3 days with no medications for fever and no fever. And then they will be allowed to return to their regular activities on campus. If during that isolation time and symptoms don't improve, we will contact the university hospital, the Wake Forest University Hospital, and perhaps they will recommend admitting if the symptoms warrant that. As far as the second question about mandatory quarantining, again, we're following our recommendations from the UNC system and other entities such as the CDC, the health department, and also the Association of College Health Association, the American College Health Association, who has put out numerous protocols and directions for us. And currently, we don't need to test prior to students returning to campus. We are going to screen them. We are going to do temperature checks and a questionnaire. And we will be doing those daily as well as for anybody who will come on campus, staff and students. And so we will be monitoring those on a daily basis, but there is no need for the COVID testing for asymptomatic patients at this time.
Thank you. The next question, I think I'll just take this one myself to save time. The question is, will 4-bedroom apartments be reduced to 2 students only? The answer is yes. The next question then is for Brian. And the question is, should students think about deferring a year? So people may be anxious about paying full tuition for a different college experience.
Sure, thank you. What I said earlier, I believe 100%. I believe in our ability, and we're planning hard to create an incredible experience for every student that's here at this campus in this hybrid environment. And we're adjusting and adapting some things. So I'm confident in the experience that students are going to have. The question, in terms of a student who might be thinking about deferring, that's a personal decision, because it really has to do a lot with, how you feel about what we're planning on doing, how that fits into your long-term plans and your family's plans. So I wouldn't pretend to tell you what you should do. My feeling is, my recommendation is to come, unless there's a specific reason why you don't feel that, your family don't feel that's right for you. And I'm confident in our ability to help you learn, to help you progress in the way that I know you're expecting to, and to have the kind of experience that you've always wanted at UNCSA.
Thank you, Brian. I would just add that to that last question that you may have to reapply if you defer. We don't, in every case, just automatically readmit people. Our policy has been that you probably will have to reapply. The next question is for Tracy. And Tracy, the question is, will the dining hall, or how will the dining hall and other eating spaces on campus change due to the circumstances?
Okay, so we are still working on what our final protocols will look like, but for sure, we will have to reduce density, so we won't be able to have as many students in the cafeteria at a time as we have in the past. All of our eating spaces will be available. We have a small pod store where you can purchase items. We have a library cafe, and we also have a pickle jar, which is more like a grill, fast food type food, salads. Students will be able to access all of those places throughout the day. However, as you can imagine, we're going to be managing a lot of people at one time, especially in the main cafeteria. Because of that, we are working through some options, which include the meal times maybe being assigned on certain days or maybe all days. So we're working with the deans and the art schools to see what time students are out of class so that we can make sure we assign them a time so that everybody gets the opportunity to go to the cafeteria and have a meal. In addition to that, we will have increased grab and go items, which means if you're out of time or if you just don't necessarily want to go to the cafeteria that day, we'll have more options where you can just grab a sandwich and chips and drinks and that kind of thing so that you can still get a meal on any day at any time. We will enforce social distancing in our cafeteria, but we've also come up with a plan to increase space in our Haynes Student Commons so that students can eat in our Eisenberg Hall as well as in another section of Haynes Student Commons that we're getting ready. Finally, there are some outside spaces where students can enjoy picnic tables and other seating so that as they collect their food, they'll be able to maybe take it outside. And of course, you can always get your food and also go back to your room or to your residence hall where there's common space there to eat. So there'll be some adjustments, but everybody will eat, everybody will have a meal time.
Thank you, Tracy. Next question comes back to you. Are freshmen allowed to bring a car on campus and park on campus?
Yes, you are allowed to bring a car. You are allowed to park on campus, permitted that you have an actual UNCSA parking permit from our campus police department. So they handle the actual parking process. You'll have to register your car, pay for your permit, and then you'll be allowed to park on campus. The first few days, because it's early in the semester, there is, you'll have a few days, in other words, to take care of that. But I do encourage you to do that prior to coming to campus or as soon as you arrive so that you don't get ticketed on campus, but yes.
Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Spillman and Dr. Peterson. Do masks have to be worn by professors when they're teaching, and will they be more than 6 feet away?
Well, I'll start. It's always best to wear a mask, but each individual art school will have certain exceptions to that depending on their particular needs. But the mask should be worn at all times. Sometimes they may have shields up that will shield the professor away from the students. And Karen can probably answer that better.
So we will be are continuing to develop protocols for each classroom situation. As you know, in an arts conservatory, the university is not simply desks and a blackboard. It's a much more complicated matter. And we are currently developing protocols for each type of instruction. faculty as well as students and staff are expected at all times to wear masks unless the instructional experience is compromised. And in those cases, we are developing other protocols. Many of the faculty will be required or at least advised to not only wear a mask, but a face shield. It depends on what kind of work is is occurring. And in many cases, we will also be creating plexiglass dividers. And of course, everyone is going to remain 6 feet apart at all times unless there is a reason that they can't. And again, there will be very specified protocols that are articulated for each experience. So that's what we can say now. This will be a big part of orientation to your art form in the fall, will be how in those very specific contexts you navigate specific protocols that are for your protection, but also for the protection of faculty.
Thank you. The next couple of questions have to do with masks, and it looks like Tracy and Brian might be best to answer them. The first question is, do we have to wear masks in our dorm common areas and in our dorm room? And the second question is, are masks provided?
Okay, I can get started, Brian. Yes, we ask that you wear a mask inside the residence halls in all of the common areas. So that's any place other than your room is considered a common area. Now, bathrooms, shared bathrooms, of course, are common areas. So in showers, no. But yes, in all other areas of the residence halls, with the exception of your room, you will be required to wear your mask. Now, in your room, you are not required to wear it in the room with your roommate. We are treating you and your roommate similar to a family situation where at home now you may not wear a mask at your house. However, if you're in the room and you feel comfortable in your mask, we encourage you to wear them as much as possible, even in your room. But it's not required in the room, but you can certainly do that. But in the common areas, it's required. As for a mask, UNCSA, we will provide at least, we will provide masks to students in some form. So you will, but I do encourage you to bring your own mask, because these are masks that will have to be worn every day, kind of all day. So you want to be able to have an ample supply of reusable masks. And so Dr. Spillman may be able to speak to the types of masks, so that there are a lot of masks out there on the market. And so people are asking which ones are good, which ones should I buy, which ones should I have? So just make sure that the mask is compliant with CDC standards. But yeah, so in certain places, we'll have some disposable masks and some other options for our students as well. Dr. Spillman, did you have anything about the types of masks?
There's been a lot of testing and research and review of all the types of masks. Currently, the surgical masks that are now readily available are adequate. You want to make sure you have a really good fit around the face so that there is no leaking of air or water particles from you outside the mask, because you want to make sure it fits on the side, underneath, and it should cover your nose. The question that we have is that are you able to wear a shield? Now, the shield does not provide that kind of coverage, so we are still recommending the masks to be worn. You can certainly wear a shield in addition to a mask, but a mask would be the recommendation that we're going with. So the cloth masks do work as long as they fit well. There have been a lot in the community that people have gotten together and made, and those are perfectly fine as long as that material is fairly dense and not very porous. But yes, by all means, bring your own masks, and also the little smaller surgical masks do work well as well.
Thank you, Dr. Spillman. Next question, Tracy. Will families be allowed to visit on weekends? And what will the visitation process look like?
Okay, so yes, families will be able to visit. You will receive protocols and the process for coming to campus during our parent orientation sessions, which will be held July 20th through the 27th. And so look out for more information on how you can engage with your student on campus here in Winston-Salem.
The next question, I'll direct it towards Steve first, and Tracy can add if she'd like to. How do we plan to ensure sanitation in shared areas, bathrooms, dorm rooms, classrooms, and how will they be cleaned and sanitized?
Thank you for the question. Good question. We'll continue our cleaning and disinfecting protocols. However, we will ramp those up substantially, meaning we're going to focus on high-touch areas throughout the day, high-volume traffic areas such as restroom areas, common areas, lounges, the likes of that. We will be using CDC and EPA-approved disinfectant. We're also going to start employing electrostatic sprayers and foggers so that we can get in between classes and do some cleaning and disinfecting as well. That helps in our high-volume areas, our performance venues, as well as areas where we have soft goods. The hard surfaces can be cleaned with the disinfectant and spray, but we think the foggers and electrostatic sprayers will help us in the high volume and soft pores areas.
Thank you, Steve. Tracy, can students ship items to their dorm?
So the basic answer is yes. How that process will work, we're still working on it because we have so many requests this year to ship items, and we have a very limited mail center, and we have very limited space, but we do want to make sure students have that option. So we're just trying to work out how we get your stuff here, store it safely until you arrive. So yes, you can plan to ship it, but give us a bit more time to work out the process, and we'll share that with you in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Next question, Karin. If a student needs to self-isolate, how will this affect their academic records and, progress in class and so forth?
Well, thank you for this question. This is absolutely critical. So for the safe and healthy health of our entire campus, it is absolutely vital that students self-isolate when they have symptoms, and we will be going over a protocol with you at that time. Therefore, every faculty member and every school will be working on the means by which student work is able to be made up, and you will not be held accountable for taking care of your health and the community's health. There will be more information about that. Some of those procedures will likely still be in development in July, but we are very aware of this and believe that the first priority is the health of the community.
Thank you. I just want to let everyone know that we are going to go a few extra minutes over. We hope you can stay with us in an attempt to answer a few more questions. As was mentioned when we opened, questions we don't get to today will certainly be collected and answered and posted on our website on our Fall 2020 page. We're going to go probably another 10 minutes or so and just try to answer a couple more questions. The next question we've kind of hit on already for Dr. Stillman. Can you explain the daily screening process and how temperature checks will be done, and then talk a little bit about tracing protocols, and then will parents be allowed to visit their children if they're in quarantine?
Certainly. The daily screenings will be a questionnaire, and they will be submitted, and we're working out protocols about where they're submitted to. Those will be for students and staff and faculty, and also, but on check-in, you will, and everyone will be screened with a questionnaire and temperature taken prior to coming on campus on move-in day. And we're also working on those protocols and when and where and what will be done for check-in.
Thank you. The next question, Tracy, will students be able to visit and interact with each other in all the A through F halls?
Students will be able to interact with each other in the common areas. We are asking that only the roommates actually be in the individual living rooms. So when you're in your specific dorm room, we are asking that only you and your roommate occupy that space so that you can at least ensure that your space has only been occupied by you and one other person. Those people who are in singles, that may be a little different, and we can talk about that, but definitely the doubles, we ask that you respect your roommate and have only one person in the room. But the common areas, yes, as long as you follow safety protocols, including social distancing and masks.
Thank you. Tracy, for students in quarantine, will they receive meals and will there be vegetarian options?
Yes, students will receive meals and they will, if they ask for specific vegan or vegetarian options, we can certainly make that available as our cafeteria provides that on a daily basis. So that will be available.
Next question is for Jane. Jane, if someone is reapplying for financial aid due to a job loss, will they still be able to apply for work study?
So I'm presuming that means that they are going to appeal a change of circumstances based on a parent losing a job or a student losing a job. Yes, if the student submits an appeal and it changes their eligibility, they can certainly be offered work study if they now meet the eligibility requirements for that, and if that will help them with their financial situation for the term.
Thank you. Question for Dr. Spillman. In a part of the country, due to the virus, doctors are not accepting appointments for the required physical documentation. Will the campus health center offer physicals to students so that they can have all the medical paperwork they will need?
We have a limited ability to do physical examinations in the health services area. It's a very small area and very can't occupy a lot of students that need physical exams. They do take up a bit of time. However, we do on a case-by-case basis offer that. Be aware that your student may be there still will be a hold on that student's account until the proper documentation. So it may be a few days before we can work the student in for a physical exam. But we have a limited ability to do physical exams on campus.
Thank you. Tracy, will there be a parents' weekend?
So we haven't made any final decisions about the particular parents' weekend, but what I can tell you is we will definitely engage with our parents in some format. It may most likely will be virtual, but there is a slim possibility it could be in person. We are watching the numbers and watching the situation, but we will certainly have some version of a parents' weekend so that we can engage with you all during the fall semester. So again, virtual, most likely virtual, but if we can do it in person, we will.
Thank you. Jane, the question is there more funding available for students to apply for under the CARES Act due to financial changes? And then how do students apply for this?
The campus committee that worked on the criteria for the CARES Act, coupled with the actual legislation that created the CARES Act, indicated that the funds from the CARES Act Higher Education Relief Fund would be used for students who had expenses related to the disruption on campus from the coronavirus. So that meant to us that the students had to have been enrolled on our campus in the spring of 2020 to have been affected by that disruption to campus. So at this time, there would not be funding for students that were not enrolled in prior spring. Those of you that are coming new in the fall would not meet that criteria. We've nearly expended our full appropriation of funds, And only in a case where we literally had any funding left and someone could make a case for disruption and complete the required form. But I am not foreseeing that there will be really any application for that for new incoming students.
Thank you, Jane. Everyone, this will be our last question, and it'll go to Brian. And this will leave a little time for Brian to kind of close out the session today. Brian, there were multiple questions regarding parties on campus and off campus, and our ability to prevent students from attending.
Well, that speaks to something that is at the heart of the college experience, which is, I mean, it's not so much parties, but the social element of it. And that goes in a lot of directions. I mean, social as it involves to, just being with your friends and your colleagues, but also there's a social element to just making art and that process. So I've heard this question come up many, many times throughout the last several months as discussions have been had about the college environment and campus's ability to come back and things like that. I want everybody to know that there will be a social element to our students' experience here. I've also, I say this also having substantial experience in being with our students over the past many years, and that this campus is unlike any other. I talked about that in the outset, but it's unlike any other because of the dedication and what our students do. Our students work harder than any group of students I've seen anywhere else I've worked as a faculty member, as a dean, as a leader. So I know that's the case here. I know that our students need time together and they need to be together. And when we say words like parties, we also, don't want to loop that into a general category. There are lots of different kinds of parties or ways to be together. We talked a lot today about community health standards and expectations. And, I've said the word mask a few times today, but I also mentioned in that in terms of social distancing. Whether it's social distancing as it applies to the common spaces of dorms, or whether it's social distancing that needs to be in place if somebody who lives on campus has some of their colleagues or friends over to their apartment or house. We expect everybody to abide by that. And what we will do is make sure that everybody understands why that's important in terms of education through the training that's going to happen beforehand, as well as constantly reinforcing that throughout the year. But I will say I do expect people to be together. I do expect people to do it responsibly. And I don't expect, one of the questions mentioned, a boundaryless college experience will prevail. At our campus, I don't think that is the same kind of situation as campuses that have 25 and 30,000 people. And I don't think it's actually just a size thing too, is that there's a different kind of focus on this campus than any other. Our students come here more focused from day one on what they're doing and what they want to do than any other place I've been. And that has everything to do with this place, but also the arts training. So I think that level of focus and discipline is going to be a much better environment for us to be safe and responsible in what we do as a community. I do expect people to be social, and I do expect there to be parties, but I 100% also expect and anticipate that people will do it responsibly while we're in this period. Everything we've talked about today, from how we're going to deal with things in a classroom or residence hall or a dining hall, to how we deal with social interactions, it recognizes that this isn't business as usual for anybody. And while we're in this period together, where COVID-19 is something that we have to mitigate like this, we will all have to change how we do things. But I think there's no other place that's better suited to do that with the kind of spirit and commitment than a community like this. So that's something we just have to constantly keep in touch about and reinforce with each other, in small groups and in large groups like we're doing today. So I 100% commit that will always be a priority for me and every person on this campus that's leading it. So with that, we'll stop there. I want to thank you all again, not just for being here, but thank you for your questions. We've made every effort to answer those as clearly as possible and to be as transparent about what we're doing and what we're planning to do and the challenges we have. And we will continue to approach this that way. So like I said in the beginning, if we want everybody to feel connected to what's going on and to feel like they know what's going on, and if you don't feel that way, we want to hear from you. We'll take all the questions that we didn't get to today, and they'll be addressed in the FAQ section, as well as questions that you'll ask going on. And we'll have a lot more sessions that we'll plan for more opportunities for you to connect directly. So thank you all very much. It's great to have the next group of Fighting Pickles all in one space, even if it's virtual. And I look forward to the time where we'll all do that in person. So take care. Have a great rest of your day.